Can you believe he offered to play piano for a meal? The incredible legend revealed. Jake leaned against the weathered facade of Harold's diner, watching the flickering neon sign sway in the autumn breeze. It hadn't he always been this way? Just months ago, he was a respectable lecturer, sharing the gift of music at the local university, his fingers flying over keys just as easily as they had once danced under the watchful eyes of students. Now, with savings dwindling, bills piling high, and the hollow echo of discontent filling his apartment, he felt like a ghost haunting the remnants of his former life. Was this truly where it all led? To the corner of a diner, bartering talent for meals? The thought made him shiver. He clenched his fists, remembering the rhythm of his life break down into dissonance, each financial worry a jarring note. He might be jumping into desperation, but the idea of playing for food felt like a last grasp at survival. Glancing in through the diner window, he spotted Harold, an oversized, gentle older man with silver hair, moving around the kitchen. Did he even have the strength to face such embarrassment? Perhaps it wasn't just his artistry he'd be sacrificing. "Jake, you all right?" The voice broke through his swirling thoughts, pulling him back. It was Harold, stepping outside, not waiting for a response. The instinct to walk away rose to meet him, but the weight of his reality was heavier. How could he just let it all go? "Why don't you bring that old piano of yours back to life in here? Play for the folks and we'll square it with some meals. What do you say?" The offer echoed in his mind like a haunting refrain. The sputtering hope ignited by Harold's kindness collided with an agonizing tangle of emotions. Part of him longed to jump aboard this last lifeline he had been thrown, while another part felt the desperate pull of his family. To plunge into the depths of music again would mean stepping away from his responsibilities, a sick mother and a younger sister who looked up to him for guidance. Could he risk their hope for his own? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As he crossed the threshold, a cacophony of voices filled his ears, each patron lost in their own tangled narratives. The piano sat invitingly in the corner, dust motes twirling in the dim light. With each hesitant step toward it, his heart thumped with uncertainty. Would he merely be a distraction, a sad spectacle? In his mind, he envisioned all eyes rolling, dismissing him as just another washed-out dreamer. But the moment he sat down, the old keys felt familiar beneath his fingers, a voice fighting to escape. As he played, his heart poured into each note, singing songs of forgotten love and loss, as if whispering to every lonely soul in the diner. He could feel the patrons shift, their movements dancing in tandem with his melodies. Yet uncertainty loomed. What if this wasn't enough? What if he became trapped in a cycle, a small-town artist forever overshadowed by the specter of what could have been? Amidst the applause and cheering, Jake's breath caught in his throat. The sensation of uplifting joy battled with the threat of unspoken burdens. As he caught Harold's eye, a steady beacon of encouragement, he weighed his dreams against the growing warmth of community he had only just begun to reclaim. A sophisticated stranger in tailored clothes strolled in, eyes glinting as he recognized Jake's talent. There it was, the chance for fame, for all his dreams to materialize if he turned his back on this new family. He discovered as his fingers hovered over the keys, Jake faced the ultimate question. Would the allure of success blind him to the people who had offered their refuge? The room pulsed with anticipation, but his heart felt heavy as he stared at the piano, an emblem of his fractured choices. Could he risk everything for something so uncertain? The uncertainty pressed upon him like a brick wall, forcing him to confront a life that suddenly felt so dangerously bifurcated. Plumes of uncertainty filled Jake's mind as he lingered before the piano, the ambient noise of the diner fading into an almost surreal backdrop. The echoes of applause still vibrated in the air, but they felt distant, attenuated by the gravity of his thoughts. The enchanting feeling of playing dismissed by the reality of the choices he now faced. The pull towards ambition clawed at him with increasing desperation. What would success mean for him? Could he reconcile his aspirations with the obligations that tethered him to his family? He brushed his fingers lightly across the piano keys again, instinctively searching for an answer in music as solace. Yet the warmth of the diner no longer felt like home. Instead, it transformed into a hall of mirrors reflecting all the divergent paths ahead as he glanced around. The moment crystallized. Eyes widened in appreciation, people leaning forward in chairs. Entranced, he was more than a mere diversion. Here, with these patrons, he mattered. But he also understood that every note he played was also a concession to his dreams. A commitment to growing away from the loved ones who depended on him. Uncertainty morphed into torment. Did he have the right to pursue personal fulfillment? Time lapsed in a fugue of contemplation. Suddenly, Harold appeared beside him, practically shimmering with enthusiasm. "Jake, that was incredible. You know, I've always believed good music can elevate even the most ordinary moments. You could put on a show here. A real performance." The thought crested like a wave, threatening to drown him beneath its weight. What if this was it? A rebirth of sorts, except rooted in a soil that could not sustain him long-term. Jake's heart raced with unbidden excitement as visions of stardom flashed before him. Crowds, admiration, applause, but the images of his mother's frail face and his sister's expectant gaze followed like shadows. Harold, this Jake started hesitantly. Would he go back to lecturing for a steady paycheck? Or chase a fleeting chance of something greater? Doubtful calculations warred within him. What if I got noticed? What if someone offers me something more? "Then you take it," Harold replied decisively, a glimmer in his eyes. "But don't forget where you came from." At that moment, clarity settled over Jake like a soft blanket. Perhaps it wasn't about choosing between music and family, success and obligation. Maybe the key lay in understanding the amalgamation of both lives a delicate balance between aspiration and responsibility. "I need to be careful," he whispered more to himself than to Harold, a realization unspooling in his thoughts. Before he could dwell too long, the well-dressed stranger he noticed earlier approached with a gleam in his eye that cut through the din. "Jake, right? I couldn't help but notice your talent. I represent a few artists, and I think you have something special." His words hung in the air, electric and laden with possibility. This was the crossroads he had feared. Would the allure of recognition siphon him away from what mattered most? A chance at stardom extended before him like a golden key, beckoning him to unlock a realm of opportunity. But each note he had played whispered caution. Yet in that moment, between Harold's support and the stranger's invitation, he felt himself standing on the precipice of a decision. The weight of his family's needs pressed against the temptation of his dreams. Did he even know what he truly wanted anymore? As the atmosphere thickened with palpable tension, Jake discovered a small flicker of determination blossoming within him. Could he blend the best of both worlds? His thoughts lay bare, a cocktail of fear, hope, ambition, and resolve swirling violently within. But he was no longer just chasing after music. He was nurturing a vision. Jake inhaled sharply, heart pounding as he contemplated his next move. Suddenly, clarity cut through the chaos. The time had come to face his own reflection, to define his path not just in music, but as the man he wanted to become. Would he take the plunge and trust that he could navigate both passion and duty? The path diverged ahead, and with an indelible sense of determination rippling through him, Jake wondered if he was truly ready to risk it all. The stranger's gaze held steady, waiting for his answer, yet the weight of countless decisions loomed, thick and palpable. As he opened his mouth to speak, he realized he was at the brink. What would he choose? Jake's heart thudded in his chest, a relentless drumbeat that echoed the enormity of the moment. The tantalizing offer hung in the air, each word like a flickering candle flame illuminating a darkened room. He opened his mouth, but hesitation clutched at his throat like a vice. A million questions surged forward, uninvited yet relentless. What if he said yes and failed? What if he found success but lost sight of his family, his values, and the life he had built. Jake? The man's face shimmered with confidence, eyes probing. You have the potential to do something great. You can't let it slip by. Tension rippled through Jake's body, and he wrestled with the duality of his existence, the artist within yearning for the stage, and the family man anchored in responsibilities. Laughter mixed with clinking glasses surrounded him, a cacophony of life and fleeting moments made real by the music he created. Yet here he stood, a solitary figure fraught with uncertainty, caught between expectation and aspiration. I just need some time, he finally articulated, an instinctive retreat from the precipice. I can't just jump into something without thinking it through. Yes, take your time, the stranger replied with a knowing glimmer. But remember, opportunities like this don't come often. He took a step back, his presence still magnetic but less imposing. I'll be in town for a few days. Think it over. Jake forced a nod as the stranger retreated, leaving a lingering aura of possibility in his wake. It was the call of ambition, but the questions nagged at him. Was he brave enough to test the waters of both dreams and duties? Would following this path lead not just to personal success but to meaningful connections with his family? He turned back to the piano, the familiar hum of keys calling him home. As he played, his fingers danced across the ivory, seeking solace, clarity. Each note told a story, weaving memories of family gatherings, shared laughter, and the timeless bond of love. The music became a conversation, a tether between his past and the burgeoning future. Gradually, his resolve solidified. Perhaps he could carve a path that allowed both worlds to coexist. He envisioned hosting intimate performances at the diner, his artistry on display while simultaneously nurturing his roots in the community he cherished. It was audacious yet attainable, a delicate balance he aimed to achieve. With a newfound purpose ignited within him, Jake leaned closer to the piano, focusing intently. Not just for the patrons who came seeking moments of joy, but for himself to reclaim the passion that had once flourished without compromise. Harold's enthusiastic support resonated in his mind. It was a reminder that each note he played carried the weight of a future he could shape. Suddenly, a familiar voice broke through his reverie. Jake, fancy playing a little something tonight? It was Lisa, his sister, her warmth spilling into the space. He turned to face her, a soft smile tugging at his lips. Yeah, actually, I was just thinking about doing a performance here. The admission felt both strange and exhilarating. Excited anticipation danced in her eyes. Really? You should. You always shine when you play. Mom would be so proud. But pride came with its own set of expectations. And you? Are you on board with this? Jake searched her gaze for affirmation. Of course. But remember, you're still my brother first. This doesn't change who you are? She reassured him. A reminder that weighed just as much as his ambitions. As she poured coffee into a cup, a wave of comfort washed over him. It was an essential exchange, a reprieve from the uncertainty that had clouded his mind. The threads of support from his family anchored him, illuminating the potential of his dreams. What could he now create both musically and personally? The path was beginning to unfold, but was he prepared for what lay ahead? Jake composed himself. Okay, Lisa, let's give this a try. I want to play and I want you there. This decision felt right in a way his previous indecision hadn't. He could pursue a dream and still remain anchored in his family's values. As the first notes rang out, reverberating through the diner, he felt lighter, more resolute, ready to tackle the challenges of balance and responsibility head-on. Yet, in the midst of his newfound clarity, an unforeseen message blinked on his phone, an unknown number. Was it the stranger again? The possibilities bubbled just below the surface, teasing him with the promise of adventure. Perhaps this was the moment he had truly been waiting for. What would it lead to next? The message on Jake's phone vibrated intensely against the polished surface of the piano, breaking the spell that had tethered him to his notes. Its suddenness pulled him from the swell of music filling the diner. He swiped to unlock the screen, heart racing anew, anticipation mingling with anxiety. The text read simply, "It's Leo. Let's meet. There's a lot to discuss." Leo, the stranger from earlier, had ignited something within him, a flicker of possibility. The offer had lingered like an unresolved chord in his mind, beckoning him to explore a path he'd nearly dismissed. Could he really be on the brink of something extraordinary? Who is that? Lisa broke his concentration, eyes narrowing in curiosity. His sister had a knack for cutting through distractions with her perceptive inquiries. Just a potential opportunity, he replied, trying to keep it vague while feeling a cocktail of excitement and tension brewing inside him. Sounds interesting, she exclaimed, excitement sparking her voice. You need to find out what it is. This might be the big break you've been waiting for. Jake chewed his lip, weighing the implications. If he met Leo, it could change everything. But was he ready? Would he risk treading too far from the familiarity and warmth of his current life? The weight of expectation began to settle again. He recalled the man's confident expression, his firm belief in Jake's potential. He took a moment to reflect. The diner was still vibrating with life around him. His community was right there, but the thought of performing to a larger audience swelled with an intoxicating allure. The digression pulled in two directions. Honoring the roots that supported him or sprouting out in pursuit of a dream reaching higher than he had allowed himself to imagine. Jake? Lisa's voice softened, perceptive to her brother's momentary unease. Whatever this is, make sure it feels right for you. Just don't lose yourself in it. We all signed up for this journey together. Her words echoed in his mind like a chord progression he couldn't shake. They drifted between his ambitious fantasies and familial bonds. Could he balance this growing aspiration without losing what mattered most to him? With resolve, he typed back, "I'm free tomorrow. Let us meet." After sending the response, Jake returned his focus to Lisa, who was still watching him intently. "I think I'll make a decision for real this time. It's about time I embrace what I've buried so deep." "Great," she responded, extending a hand playfully to ruffle his hair. "I knew you had it in you. Just remember to breathe. You've always been a natural." Taking her encouragement to heart, he let the tension slip free like notes escaping his fingers in a cascading flourish. He began to play again as patrons stopped, drawn by the sound of spontaneity blending into the fabric of the diner. Each note sprouted forth with purpose. He was sharing a part of himself, feeding off their smiles, the responses sparking joy in his heart. As he played, a fire ignited deeper regarding tomorrow. What would it bring? Opportunity was pursuing him now. Could he seize it without forgoing the tender connections that grounded him? Finishing his piece, he wiped a bead of sweat from his brow, dauntless resolve washing over him. But as the applause filled the room, a new reality began to dawn. His phone buzzed again, another message chimed for attention. This time it felt different, heavier with expectation. He glanced at the screen, his breath hitching at the words. "Just so you know, things are moving quickly. Be ready." He sat back in his seat, the thrill of what was to come spiraling upwards in a way he hadn't anticipated. The stakes were climbing, pulsating intricately in time with his heartbeat. What was he truly ready to face? With each tick of time, he could feel the boundary of comfort draw tighter. Something monumental began to take shape. It was more than just an opportunity. It felt like a reckoning. Tomorrow, everything could change in ways he could scarcely imagine. What awaited him when he finally met Leo? The morning light streamed through Jake's bedroom window, casting a golden hue that illuminated every corner of the room. It felt surreal, too bright, almost mocking him with its cheeriness. As he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the reality of the meeting with Leo began to sink in excitement twisted tantalizingly with trepidation. Today could unravel everything he thought he knew about himself. He swung his legs over the side of the bed, the cool floor grounding him momentarily. The piano, silent in the corner, seemed to beckon him. Hadn't he always relied on music to process his feelings? A few hesitant notes flowed under his fingers, and they were rich, resonant. But underneath the weight of his uncertainty, that melody felt unusually fragile. He needed more, something deeper. Today's possibilities demanded bravery. After a quick shower, Jake dressed in a fitted black shirt and dark jeans, an outfit that felt more professional than usual. He stared at his reflection, looking for any hint of readiness. Just be yourself, he murmured. The words did little to soften the knot in his stomach. Self-doubt crept in like fog, attempting to obscure his confidence, reminding him of every moment he hesitated, every project he tossed aside in favor of safety. Did he have what it took to step into Leo's world? With a breath that felt like liquid fire filling his lungs, he grabbed his phone. He reread Leo's last message, eyes narrowing at the urgency behind the words. Things are moving quickly. Be ready. The sentiment hung starkly. This wasn't just a meeting. It was his chance, a challenge. This time, he wouldn't fold under pressure. An hour later, Jake found himself pacing the sidewalk outside the cafe where he was supposed to meet Leo. The cafe had a bustling energy that reminded him of his diner, but it was different, more polished and sophisticated. People laughed over lattes, and the air was rich with the smell of freshly brewed coffee. He was out of his element, yet the contrast only heightened his desire to step forward. Finally, Leo appeared through the glass door, his presence commanding. He was just as Jake remembered, sharp and confident, dressed impeccably. Jake's heart raced as their eyes met, and Leo offered a small, knowing smile that both reassured and intimidated him. Glad you could make it, Leo said, sliding into a chair. There was an air about him, an energy that radiated assurance. I appreciate your quick response. Thanks for reaching out, Jake replied, the words tumbling from his mouth with nervous energy. The way Leo assessed him felt like he was being weighed, measured, and judged all at once. What did you want to discuss? Your talent, Leo said, leaning forward, his voice low and serious. You have something special, Jake. I've seen your potential, and I believe we can cultivate it. I'm launching a project, something that can open doors you might thought were sealed shut. But I need someone like you, someone daring. Are you ready to break free from your comfort zone? The question hung between them, crystal clear and sharp. Jake blinked, images flooding his mind, nights spent in the diner. The smooth wooden keys beneath his fingers, the familiar laughter of friends. Everything he knew waged an internal battle against the dull ache of ambition clawing for release. He could feel the tug of possibility digging deeper. Daring, he repeated, the word resonating, igniting an ember of determination. Was it so bad to chase after something greater? To believe he could hold the hand of destiny, even for a brief moment? Leo studied him, the silence stretching as seconds turned into eternity. Remember, the best performances come from the heart. Are you ready to play your truth? Jake inhaled sharply, a revelation spiraling into clarity. It was about more than music. It was about identity, about confronting the fear of becoming who he truly was meant to be. Yes, he said finally, his voice steady. I'm ready. The thrill mixed with dread washed over him in waves. But the choice was made, the barrier was broken. The moment he had talked himself into was finally manifesting. As they began to discuss the project in earnest, the world around him faded into noise. Jake felt like he was pirouetting into a new reality, an unknown future shimmering tantalizingly just within reach. What awaited him in this new chapter, this bold venture into uncharted waters? But as Leo sketched out grand designs, Jake could feel the creeping shadows of doubt forming in the corners of his mind again. What would he have to sacrifice to pursue this? What new obstacles would he face? In the whirl of excitement, he realized they were stepping toward something electric, something transformative. Jake didn't merely have to be ready for the meeting. He had to be prepared for a storm of change. The room pulsed with anticipation as their discussion unfolded. But in the midst of this burgeoning optimism, a chilling thought struck him. Was he truly ready to face the possibility of losing himself to the very passion he sought to reclaim? Jake sat in the cafe, a whirlwind of ideas and emotions crashing against the walls of his mind, as Leo's voice painted possibilities for him. The project was ambitious, perhaps the most audacious opportunity he had ever been offered. It felt like a dream drawn from the recesses of his imagination, a direct challenge to all the safe choices he had ever made. As Leo detailed the parameters of success, Jake's thoughts darted like bees in a field, buzzing in and out of focus. For every thrilling prospect Leo presented, there came swift counterarguments from the skeptics in his mind anew. Was he truly prepared to forsake the familiarity of his diner routine for this nebulous dream? "I need you to bring your unfiltered self into this project," Leo said, his tone unyielding. "The public craves authenticity, and I can guarantee that your voice, your sound, will resonate." Authenticity. The word echoed in Jake's head. He had spent years crafting his identity within the confines of his carefully built walls. They were barriers buttressed by the fear of failure, fortified by habitual comfort. But here Leo was challenging him to dismantle that very fortress. "What if I can't deliver?" Jake voiced his concern, the tension of vulnerability pooling in his throat. The weight of self-doubt was daunting. It always had been. Leo leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms thoughtfully. "That's a risk you have to be willing to take. What you're feeling right now is normal, Jake. You're standing on the edge of something groundbreaking. But remember, every artist grapples with the fear of inadequacy. The question is, will you let it paralyze you, or will you transform that fear into something powerful?" Jake pondered Leo's words, feeling their truth resonate. This wasn't just an opportunity to advance his career, it was a chance to redefine himself. A path that beckoned him to grapple with the essence of who he was. As discussions shifted to practicalities, with Leo outlining a timeline and resources available, Jake felt a strange confidence beginning to bubble within him. Each detail built on the last, constructing a vision right before his eyes. But within the whirlwind of ambition and planning, he felt himself grappling with a chasm of internal conflict. Would every high pitch of success demand an equal sacrifice? The reflection of himself staring back from the glass window nearby made him aware of two different Jakes. One that clung to the safety of the diner and another that stepped boldly into the fiery furnace of growth. A searing moment of clarity broke through the chaos. Growth often occurs when one stands at the precipice of their own collapse. He took a breath, closing his eyes momentarily. This wasn't merely about music. It was a crucible for his identity. Whatever happened next, he needed to make a choice based on who he truly wanted to be, not who he believed he had to be to fit in. Leo's voice broke through his reverie, almost possessing an electric quality. "You're not alone in this. I'll be here to support you. This is collaborative. You are bringing something unique, and I believe we can create something that changes the landscape." Subtle birth pangs of doubt curled back around his thoughts, but Jake met them with newfound resolve. He'd been playing it small for too long, constraining his heart and mind under layers of what he supposed was stability. Today, he might just step into the unknown with wild abandon. Would he embrace the tumultuous process that lay ahead? "I want to just be part of the project. I'll immerse myself fully," Jake declared, his voice firm and new, rebounding with the richness of possibility. "I'll give it everything." As the weight of his commitment settled upon him, Jake could feel the thrill of liberation mingling with the pressure of responsibility. Transformation awaited him, but it demanded authenticity, a willingness to expose not only his talents but his vulnerabilities as well. Yet just as excitement surged, a creeping question clawed back. If he was to truly be authentic, would that mean revealing parts of himself he had long concealed? Parts that might not be ready for the harsh scrutiny of public view. The discussion ignited a heat within him that he hadn't felt in years. It was thrilling, terrifying, and strange all at once. And in that heat, he sensed the glow of growth. If he could ride this wave of authenticity, perhaps he would craft more than just a project. He might shape his own legacy. But as they wrapped up their meeting, visiting ideas and potential, a lingering doubt lay heavy in his mind. Could he truly embrace this shift? Or would he falter when faced with the rawness of exposing his true self? Little did he know, the storm of his coming metamorphosis was just beginning to brew. Would the hurt of revealing his truths fortify him or break him? This question loomed ominously as Jake prepared to step forward into the chaos of change, caught between the excitement of his dreams and the fear that accompanied them. What was it that he hadn't yet unearthed about his own journey that could either champion or derail his ascent? The days that followed the meeting with Leo felt like a blur, an ecstatic whirlwind intertwined with moments of crushing self-doubt. Jake spent hours at the diner, flipping burgers and pouring coffee, but his thoughts were consumed by the ambitious project and the person he could become. Each order called out felt distant, a faint echo from a life he was soon meant to leave behind. With each passing minute, he wrestled with the dichotomy within him. Should he continue the daily routines that grounded him, or was it finally time to surrender to the uncertainty? The familiar clamor of the diner, the sizzling of the grill, the laughter of regulars provided a superficial comfort, yet within, he felt like a bird tapping against an invisible cage. It was a rainy Thursday evening when Leo arranged for them to meet again. The cafe was quieter this time, the patter of raindrops creating an intimate backdrop against their conversation. Leo arrived with a cardboard box filled with sketches, colors, and ideas, a tangible manifestation of the energy they had discussed previously. As he laid the materials out on the table, Jake's heart quickened and his mind raced. "Look at this," Leo said, highlighting a vision board for the project. Each image spoke of boldness and creativity, yet within each stroke, Jake saw the seeping undertones of vulnerability. "We need your voice here, Jake. This isn't just about the music. It's about who you are." Jake's enthusiasm flickered as he scrutinized the images. He gazed at the blank spaces intermingled with vibrant visuals, recognizing the reflection of his own emotions, expectations, fears, aspirations, all wanting to spill forth yet held back by apprehension. "What if who I am isn't enough?" Jake blurted, exasperation painting his tone. "What if I can't translate my thoughts into something meaningful? What if I'm just ordinary?" Leo leaned forward, his expression unyielding. "Ordinary is a concept you cling to. Our task is to embrace your ordinariness and transform it into something extraordinary. It's your experiences, those raw and messy emotions, that will set this apart." "Authenticity, Jake." Jake took in Leo's words, sensing the weight of the challenge embodied in them. The gravity of authenticity wasn't just a request. It was a demand for him to delve deep into the complexity of his own identity. He thought of the moments that shaped him, his struggles with insecurities, the laughs shared over kitchen countertops, the harsh realities that felt like stifling chains, intertwined with dreams that fluttered just out of reach. Suddenly, it felt imperative to confront those truths head-on. Perhaps the answer lay not in seeking perfection but in daring to embrace imperfections. The fear of inadequacy crumbled a bit. He could transform that into a narrative, his narrative. "I'll try," Jake responded, his voice steadier, measured with intention. "I'll channel everything I've gone through into the music. I won't shy away." Leo grinned, as if he had just coaxed a promising seed to break ground. "That's all I ask. Your journey, difficult as it may seem, is a treasure trove. Make the music full of your rawness. That's what will resonate." As they mapped out the project, Jake felt layers of himself lift, fears reframed as fire, fragility as strength. But beneath his growing resolve, an unresolved tension gripped him. What parts of his story would he share? What truths remained so raw they could turn the surge of creativity into something painful? With the rain gently fading into the night, he clenched his fists, contemplating the plunge into vulnerability. He was now on a path that demanded more from him than he had ever been willing to give. The evening ended, but the questions lingered in his mind. What would the world see when he peeled back the layers of his life? Would they celebrate his authenticity or recoil from it? As he left the cafe, he felt the pulse of transformation racing through him. Jake stood on the cusp of a revelation that would not only define his music but also reshape the very core of his being. And just as he took his first steps toward embracing his truth, a curt message popped up on his phone, an unexpected connection from an old friend. It read, "We need to talk. I know about the project." Would re-engaging with his past complicate the emerging clarity he yearned to cultivate? The fear of treading water between his past and future loomed larger than ever. The next day brought an unsettling cloud over Jackie's thoughts. He sat in the diner as the sun broke through the persistent rain, but even the bright glow couldn't pierce the weight sitting heavily on his chest. The hum of the diner was as spirited as ever, but he felt detached, like a ghost haunting a familiar place. The usual banter around him blurred into the background as he considered the message from his past, brimming with possibilities yet tainted with hesitation. Jake's mind raced with anxiety as he wiped down the counter. He couldn't ignore the alert echoing in his head. We need to talk. What could they possibly want? Memories of unfinished debates and awkward silences flooded in somewhere in his past. Perhaps there were talks of dreams deferred. But he hadn't expected them to resurface now. Would it bring clarity or chaos? When Sophia entered the diner, Jake's thoughts froze. They hadn't spoken in months, and he had a sinking feeling that her return signified something monumental. As she approached, her warm smile contrasted with the nagging uncertainty brewing within him. "Jake, it feels like ages," she said, her eyes sparkling in a way that momentarily eased his tension. Yet he found it hard to match her enthusiasm. "Yeah, it has," he replied, forcing a smile. "How have you been?" "I've been good. Busy, you know? But I heard through the grapevine about your project with Leo," she said, her voice softening. He had braced himself for any judgment or cynicism, but found himself taken aback by her genuine curiosity. "Yeah, it's big, I guess," he stuttered. "But what's it matter to you? We've both moved on." Sophia frowned slightly. "Not everything gets resolved by just moving on, Jake. I know you." Jake's heart raced as he felt her perceptiveness weigh in on him like a tangible force. The diner faded around him. It was just him and Sophia, and her words dredged up a flood of memories of past aspirations that had not solidified, the shared dreams that once hung as brightly between them as the garish neon lights outside. "What do you know?" His defiance hinted through his breath. "That you're not just a burger flipper, no matter how hard you try to convince yourself otherwise." "I remember when you used to play," she replied, her eyes searching his for answers he was afraid to give. He glanced at the plate of food untouched before him, a provocation too close to home. In that moment, he felt adrift in an ocean of vulnerability. He knew this confrontation would matter. "I play here and there. It's not stop," she interrupted, her tone sharper than he anticipated. "You're avoiding your talent. Leo sees it, and so should you." Her words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. It was true within the haze of self-doubt. He had buried the very essence of who he was. The music that swelled within him was his lifeline, yet he had chosen to quiet that voice. The truth was there, glaring back at him. "What if I fail?" he questioned, exposing the rawness of his fear. "What if putting myself out there is worse than staying where I am?" Sophia's expression softened. "But what if you don't?" Jake held his breath, the unsteady tension of uncertainty tightening around him. He stood at a crossroads, and each path had consequences that felt equally perilous. Facing his own reflections meant facing the scars he had yet to reconcile. The shadows of his past began to creep closer, a desperate desire for approval, the urgency to share his true self, and the relentless fear of rejection. Everything swirled as he contemplated the one thing, the singular heartbeat that drove his resolve. His music, as their conversation unfolded, the noise of the diner faded further into insignificance, and for the first time, Jake contemplated the power of stepping into the unknown fully. Suddenly yearning for clarity, he looked into Sophia's eyes, searching for some hint that it wouldn't be a total disaster. "What do I need to do to embrace this path, then?" A knowing smile crossed her face. "You need to decide who you are, not just for others but for yourself." Just then a shrill tone broke through the haze, his phone buzzing violently on the counter. The message notification glowed ominously, still echoing the lingering question about how deeply his past would intertwine with this potential future. Jake hesitated before checking. Would it be a call to accountability or a further beacon of doubt? Whatever it was, Jake knew he was standing at the precipice, his past pulling at his shirt while the hopes of his future beckoned enticingly. As he clicked to open the new message, uncertainty washed over him, wielding the chance to either sink or soar. Would this reckoning push him toward his awakening, or would he retreat back into the shadows of his former self? Jake stared at the message on his phone, the screen illuminating his face with an eerie glow. The familiar name sent a shiver down his spine, a mix of curiosity and foreboding that had him feeling like he was teetering on the edge of a cliff. The offer was straightforward but held deep implications. An invitation to share his music in a way he had long since avoided. He could feel Sophia's gaze on him, heavy with anticipation, as if she were waiting for a choice to emerge from the inner turmoil brewing within him. The last few months of his life had been simple. Flipping burgers, listening to old records he had once loved, yet doing little to chase the dreams he had cast aside. The thought of performing publicly sent a tremor of fear rippling through him. "What are you thinking?" Sophia asked, pulling him from his reverie. "I don't know if I can do this. What if it's just a fluke? What if I'm not what they expect?" Doubt clawed at him, insistent and demanding. Each question was like a heavy weight tethering him to the ground. She leaned closer, her sincerity a comforting balm against his anxiety. "Failure is part of growth, Jake. You have to confront what scares you. Imagine how different you'd feel if you took that risk." Jake's heart raced as he weighed her words against the crushing inertia of his fears. The prospect of failure was daunting, yet the thought of not trying felt like a greater loss. Music had always been his escape, the language that transcended his insecurities. Yet here he was, silent and afraid. "What if I just played for the diner for practice?" he proposed, feeling the spark of a plan take form inside him. The thought of an audience, no matter how small, sent a shiver of excitement rushing through him. "That essay start," Sophia encouraged. "Just get yourself out there if it's just for you. See how it feels again." A mix of determination and anxiety flooded his senses. Playing for customers at the diner, especially given their familiarity, would be a step toward confronting the ghost of who he once was, a musician ready to claim his place. Yet, as his ambition flared, he hesitated, the weight of external expectations looming over him. What if the customers didn't like him? What if they compared him to a version of soloists from his past? Jake clenched his fists, grappling with the phantom rejections of years gone by. He realized that the only way forward was through facing that darkness rather than yielding to it. "I need to do this," Jake declared, more to himself than to Sophia. The world around him blurred into insignificance as his resolve sharpened. Sophia's face lit up, pride shimmering in her eyes. "Yes, you just need to plan out a time and jump in. And remember, it's your journey. Play for yourself first." The rest of the diner continued its rhythmic buzz, patrons chatting and laughing. But Jake felt in that moment that they were part of his sanctuary, a space where he could reclaim the music he had forsaken. His fingers itched to press against the keys of his old piano, to let those long-buried notes flow once more as they discussed logistics. A new message pinged on his phone, pulling his attention away from the conversation. With a mix of excitement and dread, he glanced at the screen. It was a request. Someone wanted to connect, a familiar name that was both a reminder of the past and a challenge for his future. Breathing deeply, he realized this was the universe, or perhaps his own soul, pushing him to confront not just the music calling to him but the weight of all that he hadn't faced in years. "If I'm committing to this, then I need to face whatever comes my way," he asserted, turning to Sophia, determination pooling in his gut. The shadows of doubt loomed behind him, but he didn't feel burdened by them as much as he felt invigorated. "Let us do it, then," he said, resolving to set a date for his first performance in the diner. As he began writing confirming details, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. There was still so much uncharted territory, untested potential ahead of him, yet he could finally see a glimpse of the light breaking through the clouds. Just then, a familiar figure entered the diner, catching his eye and disrupting the moment of clarity he had just found. The encounter would test more than just his composure, it would force him to grapple with the unfinished business he thought he had left behind. Jake felt his pulse quicken as the figure approached, knowing that this confrontation could unearth something he never expected. Would he be ready for what they had to say, or would it derail the new path he was finally forging for himself? With a deep breath, Jake faced the figure approaching him. Leo. The man had become a symbol of the future he was grasping for. Yet now, his presence evoked uncertainty. Leo sported an eager smile, contrasting sharply with the knot in Jake's stomach. "Family," he exclaimed, motioning toward the empty chair at the diner table. Jake hesitated for a moment, torn between the warmth of camaraderie and the claustrophobic feeling of expectation. "What's up?" he managed, forcing a smile despite the tumults brewing within. Leo leaned closer, his voice a mixture of enthusiasm and urgency. I wanted to share something monumental, and I need you on board. I've pitched your project to key players and they love the concept. They want to know when you're ready to perform. The momentum is building fast. What do you say? The whirlwind of excitement darted through Jake's veins, making his heart pound in anticipation. Yet the weight of uncertainty quickly settled in. Perform? I'm still figuring things out now. It's the time to step out of your comfort zone. Jake, your community has offered you an audience, a foundation to build on. Leo urged, eyes glinting with conviction. Think of the diner. You're getting back to your roots. A performance there could escalate this momentum, could define your journey. For a moment, Jake's mind raced with visions, cheers, and applause, but also the biting sting of failure looming in the shadows. What if I screw up? The admission felt heavy on his tongue. Every artist does, Jake. As part of the process, Leo replied resolutely. But you have something special worth sharing. Believe in your music and they will, too. As resolute as Leo's words sounded, Jake could hear a faint but steady pulse of doubt creeping in. He remembered the scattered notes of inspiration, the countless hours spent practicing, and the risk of failure lived through so many failed performances in his mind. Yet, amidst the uncertainty, memories of laughter and warmth from the diner flooded through the familiar faces that believed in him. Would his refusal to take that step deprive them of that joy? The realization hit him like a jolt. He had the power not just to perform but to bring his community together through his music. Those threads of connection ignited a gentle flame within him. I'll do it, he declared, the resolve rising from deep within his core. I'll perform at the diner. A grin broke across Leo's face, as if a door to potential had just swung wide open. That's the spirit. Let us set a date, this is just the beginning. The conversation flowed seamlessly from there, details tumbling forth like cascading notes. As Jake moved through plans, he felt a sense of connection swell within. The people who would gather to hear him weren't just patrons. They were his anchors in the swirling tide of ambition. They were part of his story, a legitimate reason to connect the music within him to the world around him. Jake shook off any lingering shadows of doubt. He had finally defined a path marked by authenticity and daring. And in that clarity, he challenged himself to weave the tangled threads of his past with the rich tapestry of his present. Weeks flew by in a flurry of rehearsal and anticipation. The night of his performance arrived with palpable energy swirling through the diner. Bright lights flickered, and excited murmurs filled the air. As Jake glanced around the room, he saw familiar faces: Lisa, Harold, and even Sophia, each rooting for him silently. He felt a steady beat thrumming in the depths of his chest as he walked toward the piano. Each step felt as if he was tapping into the embodiment of his journey, the struggles, the heartache, the joys. A moment of hesitation struck him, but he quickly brushed it off. With a deep breath, Jake settled on the piano bench, fingers trembling lightly above the keys. The moment he started playing, he transformed. The rich sound enveloped him, igniting waves of emotion he hadn't felt in years. As the notes echoed through the diner, the crowd fell silent, attentive, connected. He released himself into the flow of melody, pouring his experiences, joys, and sorrows into the performance. Each note resonated with a raw authenticity that mirrored his journey, as he built a bridge between his past fears and current aspirations. As the last note lingered in the air, applause erupted, wrapping around him like a warm embrace. He lifted his head to see smiles shining brightly against the dim light. In that moment, Jake understood something profound. This was not merely about performance. It was a culmination of his transformation. He had bridged the gap between ambition and care, demonstrating that chasing dreams didn't have to mean abandoning what mattered most. Afterward, amidst the joyous chaos of congratulations and cheers, Leo approached with a proud smile. "You owned it, Jake. You've established something real here," he praised, clapping the man on his shoulder. Confidence surged through Jake, recognizing that he had not only played for the crowd but also reclaimed his identity. Tonight had marked an extraordinary shift. He had stepped onto the stage not just for himself but for every soul lost in the shared heartbeat of the music. It symbolized a promise that would extend far beyond any diner or project but into the heart of who he chose to become. And in that realization, Jake felt fulfilled, shimmering with the assurance that he had conquered more than just a performance. He had showcased his authenticity to both himself and his audience. Now, as he surveyed the bright faces of hope around him, family and community joining forces with dreams he knew, he was ready to embrace whatever followed. This was not the end of his journey. It was a new beginning. Now, imagine what stories could unfold from here. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm seriously. It makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. Your support matters.